I never imagined I'd be the one standing quietly in the corner, watching my own family unravel around me. But here I am, Maxine Wilson, 34, senior financial analyst, the responsible one they all nod to, but never truly see. I manage the bills for our aging family home, the one place that feels like both sanctuary and battleground. Just last month, when Chelsea forgot to chip in yet again, I wired $3,000 to cover the mortgage without a word. It's a role I've played so long that it feels automatic, paying for things no one else remembers, holding the house together while everyone else fights over who gets the credit. At family dinners, I smile politely as Chelsea commands the room with her effortless charm, soaking up my father's attention like she's the sun itself. Robert Wilson, our dad, is the kind of man who avoids conflict with a practiced ease. When Chelsea's cutting remarks land, he just looks away. There's a cold ache in those moments, like being invisible in plain sight. Secretly, I'm the one who holds the deed to the house, a secret I've never dared to reveal. I haven't played that card yet, hoping, maybe foolishly, that things could change. But beneath my calm exterior, a quiet storm brews, gathering strength I haven't shown yet. I remember one Christmas when I was 13, the weight of invisible walls pressing in tight. Chelsea tore through her shiny new bike's wrapping paper with glee, her grin wide, as Dad's proud eyes followed her every move. Meanwhile, I clutched a worn-out book, the one I had wanted but never expected to get. At dinner, Dad's praise for Chelsea's achievements rolled over me like an icy wave. After everyone else had left the table, he pulled me aside, his voice low but firm. "You need to toughen up. Chelsea's the one who's going places." Those words stung sharper than any slap. From that moment, I understood my place was always second best, the shadow behind Chelsea's spotlight. Dad never stepped in when Chelsea's cruelty crossed lines. He dismissed it as just sister rivalry or tough love. But one moment haunts me most, the night Chelsea pushed me down the stairs. I landed hard, breath knocked out of me, and Dad only shook his head, muttering, "Girls will be girls." That silent permission gave Chelsea free rein to hurt me, and it carved a hollow in my heart I still carry. Over the past decade, I've been the quiet backbone holding this fractured family together. Every month, I paid the mortgage, sometimes up to $3,000, covering Chelsea's share when she conveniently forgot. Again. I canceled my own vacations twice in 5 years to cover unexpected repairs on the house, swallowing my disappointment so the roof wouldn't leak over our heads. I drove Dad to every doctor's appointment, sat through hours of waiting rooms, and handled the taxes that no one else wanted to touch. When Chelsea announced her wedding, I even fronted the deposit on her wedding dress, swallowing the pinch of the cost to keep peace in the family. My husband, Daniel, watches all this with quiet concern, and once asked gently, "Max, do they ever thank you?" I just shrug, brushing it off, hoping my sacrifices will eventually earn me respect or at least silence the whispers of resentment. Lisa, our younger sister, lingers on the sidelines, sometimes sympathetic but mostly silent, unsure where she stands in this messy equation. The secret power I hold, the house deed in my name, remains tucked away, my quiet ace in a game I haven't yet decided to play. Chelsea's engagement party should have been a celebration, but instead, it twisted the knife a little deeper. Surrounded by family and friends, I kept my smile steady even as she said it aloud. "Max thinks she owns the family," her voice dripping with mockery and laughter that echoed in the suddenly hushed room. My face burned fiercely, heat flooding my cheeks. Dad gave a weak smile, his eyes flickering away, and said nothing. The silence screamed louder than her words. I forced my lips to curve upward, telling myself it was just a stress-induced slip, nothing more. But the sting burrowed deep, festering like a wound. I excused myself quietly and left the room, refusing the wine Chelsea offered in a strained attempt at reconciliation. That small act, walking away, holding my dignity, felt like the first crack in my silence, a tiny backbone emerging from years of bending. Yet inside, I told myself to hold on, to believe this was just a momentary lapse, even as the seed of doubt took root, twisting in the dark corners of my mind. Chelsea noticed my walkout like a predator sensing weakness, and she wasted no time turning it into fuel for her next assault. At the following family gathering, the atmosphere shifted before I even arrived. Aunt Marge gave me a long, pitying look and whispered to Uncle Glenn, "Max is just too sensitive these days, always trying to control everyone." I caught the tail end of their murmurs, and it felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I tried to keep my head down, but the whispers didn't stop. Cousins I barely knew threw me glances heavy with judgment, as if I were the troublemaker. The worst was Dad, who sat quietly at the head of the table, his silence louder than any defense. When Chelsea caught my eye, she smiled, that smug, victorious smile that said, "You're alone in this." The family started circling, enacting Chelsea's narrative with practiced ease. "Max, why don't you just lighten up?" Aunt Marge said with a condescending smile. "We're family. You can't keep making waves." Uncle Glenn chimed in. "She's always overreacting. You know how she gets." Their words echoed in my mind long after the gathering ended. I lay awake that night, replaying every moment, wondering if they were right. Was I really the problem? That gnawing doubt crept in, whispering that maybe, just maybe, I was imagining the abuse, the isolation. The more they talked, the smaller I felt, like I was shrinking under the weight of their disdain. The house felt colder, emptier. Even Daniel noticed the change. "Max, you're not alone. Don't let them gaslight you," he said gently. But his words felt distant, lost in the storm of my own questioning. Chelsea's flying monkeys weren't limited to family dinners. Texts and calls started filtering through. Friends of friends, distant relatives, subtle jabs disguised as concern. "You really should try to be more forgiving, Max," one message read. Another warned me to stop pushing too hard or risk alienating everyone. The venom was patient and methodical, a slow poison designed to erode my confidence. I found myself second-guessing every word, every action. Was I too sensitive? Was my need for fairness just a control freak's game? The isolation tightened like a noose, and for the first time, I wondered if the woman I'd been all my life, the dependable, loyal sister, was just a ghost haunting a family that no longer wanted her. I hated the doubt, but it was there, dark and insistent. Determined not to lose myself, I clung to the truth I knew deep down. I wasn't perfect, but I wasn't the villain in this story. Yet the silence from Dad stung most of all. He had always been the one I thought might stand between Chelsea's cruelty and me. Instead, his quiet avoidance felt like consent. I saw the way his eyes flicked away when Chelsea's barbs landed, like he refused to witness the damage. That night, alone in my room, I gripped the edge of the dresser, willing myself to keep standing. The gaslighting was a merciless storm, but I had to believe there was a way through it, somewhere beyond the whispers and cold shoulders. For now, I just had to survive. After days of simmering pain, I decided to confront the heart of the problem. One evening, when the house was quieter, I found Dad sitting alone on the porch, his hands wrapped around a mug of tea. The evening air was heavy with the scent of rain, and I felt my throat tighten before I spoke. "Dad, can we talk?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. His eyes met mine, glassy but tired. "I want to talk about Chelsea, about how she's been treating me. It hurts, and I want us to be a family again." For a moment, I thought he might finally hear me. Instead, his gaze dropped. "Chelsea's under a lot of pressure right now," he said quietly. "You have to understand." The words felt like a slap. I pressed on, laying out carefully the facts, dates I'd covered mortgage payments, the money I'd put in without complaint. I pleaded for fairness, for acknowledgement, but then Chelsea's voice came over the speakerphone, soft and innocent, complete with watery eyes. "Max is making things up again," she said, her tone sweet but laced with venom. "I'm just trying to keep the peace, and she's turning everything into a fight." Dad swallowed hard and looked at me with sorrowful eyes. "Max," he said gently, "we need to keep the peace for everyone's sake." His words crushed me, the hope I'd dared to cradle slipping through my fingers like sand. I wanted to scream that fairness wasn't peace if it meant being silenced, but I only nodded. Walking away from that conversation, I felt smaller than ever. as if my voice had been swallowed whole. My hope for a peaceful resolution dimmed, but I wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. The fight wasn't over. I just had to find another way. A few weeks later, Chelsea struck again, this time in front of the people I cared about most. It was my 34th birthday, a night I had hoped would be a quiet moment of respite. Instead, Chelsea turned it into a public spectacle of humiliation. Surrounded by friends and family, she casually dropped a bombshell. "Max has bankrupted herself paying for this family," she said loudly, her voice dripping with mockery. "I mean, look at her, planning a measly little vacation because that's all she can afford." The room went silent. I felt the weight of every eye fix on me, Daniel's face tight with shock, my closest friends exchanging uneasy glances. The sting wasn't just emotional. Chelsea's words poked holes in my professional reputation, implying I was reckless with money, something I had spent years building my credibility to avoid. I wanted to stand up, to defend myself, but the humiliation rooted me to the spot. The calculated cruelty was clear. This wasn't a moment of careless insult, but a deliberate attack designed to destroy me socially and financially. The laughter that followed was hollow and cruel. I caught Dad's eye across the room, but once again, he said nothing. His silence was deafening, a betrayal that cut deeper than Chelsea's barbs. The crowd shifted uncomfortably as Chelsea basked in the attention, her smile triumphant. I sank lower in my seat, the birthday candles flickering weakly, mirroring the flicker of hope inside me. The damage wasn't just words, it was the unraveling of my world in front of the people I loved. I realized, with a cold clarity, that this war was far from over. Despite the wounds, I reached a breaking point where silence was no longer an option. I texted Chelsea asking to meet. I needed to try, one last time, to extend an olive branch. The day of the meeting, my heart pounded as I sat across from her at the cafe we used to share laughter in. "Chelsea," I began, voice steady but soft, "I want us to move past this. I want respect, not conflict." I laid out my boundaries for the first time, explaining how her words and actions had hurt me deeply. I spoke not as a victim, but as a sister desperate for peace. She listened, her face unreadable. Then, with a cold smile that chilled me to the bone, she said, "I don't owe you anything." Those words slammed into me like a door shutting hard on hope. I felt exposed, raw, rejected, not just by her, but in front of the family we both shared. My voice caught in my throat, and for once, tears pricked the corners of my eyes. Daniel reached over and squeezed my hand, steadying me when I thought I might crumble. In that moment, I realized something I'd long resisted. I had done everything I could to fix this. There was no bridge left to build, no apology left to ask for. Chelsea's cold rejection was the final line crossed. The family I had tried to hold together was fracturing beyond repair, and I was standing alone, no longer invisible, but painfully, defiantly present. After that meeting with Chelsea, the coldness from the family didn't just linger, it deepened, thickening around me like a suffocating fog. Invitations that used to come almost automatically stopped arriving. Birthday cards, holiday gatherings, even casual Sunday lunches, the silence was deafening. Every text I sent went unanswered. I caught snippets of hushed conversations when I happened to be in the room, a symphony of exclusion orchestrated by Chelsea's subtle manipulations. She had woven a web so tight that even distant relatives, people I barely knew, were swept in by her narrative. I wasn't just isolated, I was erased. Daniel and Lisa remained my only anchors in this storm. Daniel's quiet presence was a balm, though even his support felt fragile against the overwhelming tide of rejection. Lisa's sympathy was tentative, as if she was afraid to fully step into my side. One evening, after another family event I wasn't invited to, I sat alone in the house I had kept from foreclosure, the very walls whispering reminders of my sacrifices. The silence was heavy, pressing down on me. I traced the edges of old photographs, watching smiles that felt like memories from another life. Doubt crept in again, insidious and unwelcome. Maybe I was the problem, too sensitive, too demanding, too much. The thought tasted bitter, but the exhaustion was real. My body ached in a way that no sleep could fix. I remember sinking onto the worn couch in the living room, the faded fabric rough beneath my palms. A deep weariness settled over me, the kind that seeps into your bones and blurs the edges of your resolve. Yet beneath that exhaustion, something else flickered, an ember of simmering determination. I had spent years bending, breaking, and glossing over my own pain for the sake of peace, but peace had never come. I realized that to survive this, something had to change. I wasn't sure what the change looked like yet, but it had to be more than silence and sacrifice. The house felt colder, but inside me, a slow-burning fire was beginning to stir. I closed my eyes and heard the echo of Chelsea's laugh, the way she so easily commanded attention, leaving me in the shadows. For a moment, I let the tears fall, not from weakness, but from the weight of carrying the family's invisible burdens alone. When the tears stopped, I wiped my face and sat up straighter. The loneliness was crushing, yes, but I wasn't defeated. Not yet. Somewhere beneath the pain, beneath the endless self-doubt, I found a flicker of something I hadn't fully acknowledged before, a quiet, fierce resolve. The Wilson family might have tried to erase me, but I was still here, and I wasn't going anywhere. The day of Chelsea's wedding arrived with an unbearable brightness, the kind that seemed to spotlight every shadow I carried inside. I sat in the third row, watching the ceremony unfold like a scene from a life I wasn't meant to live. Then Dad took the stage to speak. His words cut deeper than any insult. I have only one daughter, and I am so proud of her. His eyes were locked on Chelsea, glowing with undivided pride. The applause that followed felt like a thunderclap, reverberating through the room and around my heart. I was invisible, completely and utterly erased in that moment. My throat tightened as I forced myself to stay seated, the sting of betrayal burning on my skin. Then came the most surreal moment. As the reception buzzed around me, the caterer approached, handing me the bill for the entire event, $25,000, a debt I had quietly covered, unknown to everyone but me. The weight of it crushed my chest, mingling with the humiliation and the growing fire in my gut. Slowly, deliberately, I stood up. The sharp click of my shoes on the polished floor echoed in the stunned silence as all eyes turned to me. Guests, cameras, family faces frozen in shock. A quiet, almost imperceptible smile curved my lips. I didn't say a word. I just walked out. Every step was a declaration. That moment shattered something inside me. The veil lifted, revealing the harsh truth. Dad's favoritism wasn't a mistake. It was a total erasure of who I was. Hope died that night. In its place, cold, ruthless clarity took root. I was done waiting for their approval. Alone in my car, the world outside blurring through the rain-speckled windshield, I replayed the years, the quiet sacrifices, the silent supports, the betrayals disguised as family drama, the mortgage payments I'd absorbed without complaint, the moments I held my tongue while Chelsea's barbs landed, the countless times Dad looked away. The anger welled up inside me, sharp and bitter, slicing through the numbness. This wasn't just a family failing. It was a pattern, a cruel dance I was tired of leading. No more excuses. No more keeping the peace at the cost of my dignity. I thought about the house deed, tucked safely in my name, the financial leverage I had never dared to use. Never again, I whispered into the empty car, the words heavy with promise. The grief that had clung to me like a shroud transformed into something fiercer, rage. It wasn't just anger at Chelsea or Dad, but at the entire family system that allowed this cruelty to fester. I realized I was no longer a victim waiting for rescue. I was becoming a force, a storm gathering strength beneath a calm surface. The past no longer held me captive. Instead, it fueled a new clarity, a burning determination to reclaim what was mine. Not just the house, but my voice, my worth, my truth. The car's heater hummed quietly, but inside, I felt a fire that no chill could touch. The Wilson family had forgotten one thing. I was still here, and I was ready. That night, I sat down with Daniel, the one person who had never wavered, who had quietly held space for my pain without judgment. "It's time they see who I really am," I told him, my voice steady but fierce. "And who they've been stealing from all these years." He nodded, his eyes steady but cautious. "You'll expose them?" he asked softly, the weight of the decision pressing between us. "Yes, publicly. No more secrets, no more hiding." We talked long into the night, laying the groundwork for a plan that would cut through the lies and silence. Our strategy focused sharply on Chelsea and Dad, the heart of the betrayal. The shift inside me was profound. The exhaustion and confusion gave way to a cold, calculated resolve. I began gathering records, mortgage statements, receipts, bank transfers, every piece of evidence that documented years of my unseen labor and financial sacrifice. This wasn't just about money. It was about reclaiming my story, my power. Daniel's support was a steady anchor as I prepared to reveal the truth in a way no one could ignore. The quiet woman who had borne the burden for so long was transforming into someone unbreakable. The fight was no longer just survival, it was justice, and it had begun. I sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by piles of bills, bank statements, and a notebook where I'd started mapping out every financial thread that tied us together. It was overwhelming, the sheer extent of my invisible labor and money flowing into keeping the family afloat. Chelsea's dependence on me was glaring. Credit card bailouts, last-minute bill payments, even the occasional emergency cash she claimed was for rent, but never fully explained. Dad, on the other hand, was tethered to me for home maintenance and managing his medical appointments. I realized I was the linchpin holding their unstable world steady, yet they treated me like an outsider, or a convenience rather than family. In the quiet hum of the afternoon, I made an appointment with my lawyer. The hours spent sorting through documents paid off as we confirmed my legal rights to the house and the finances tied to it. The lawyer's calm voice gave me both validation and a chilling clarity. My name was on the deed, the accounts, and the critical papers. I wasn't just the family's safety net. I was the foundation. And that gave me leverage I hadn't dared to wield before. I photographed text messages where Chelsea begged for money, saved emails about deferred payments, and cataloged every instance of financial abuse. Sometimes the weight of it all pressed down so hard, I felt like my chest would cave in. But beneath the fatigue was a strengthening resolve. They needed me far more than I needed them. I wasn't the powerless one anymore. I was the power they'd ignored for so long. I whispered to myself, "You're not invisible. Not anymore." The cracks in their facade were clear, and I was ready to use that. This wasn't just a family problem. It was a reckoning waiting to happen. That night, as I closed the folder of evidence, I felt a quiet surge of hope. The path ahead was steep, but I was no longer wandering blindly in the dark. Every receipt, every message was a weapon in disguise. The balance was shifting, and I was the one holding the scales. Daniel's steady presence beside me was a reminder I wasn't alone. Together, we would dismantle the lies they clung to so desperately. I woke the next morning with a strange calm, as if a heavy storm inside me had settled into a silent, waiting tension. The plan was beginning, and I had to be precise. No mistakes, no slip-ups. This wasn't revenge fueled by anger. It was justice carved out of truth, and I would hold it like a shield. I started by changing every password on the shared accounts, the utilities, the credit cards, even the online banking. It was a small but decisive step, the first line of defense in reclaiming control. I updated legal documents, making sure my interests were clearly protected, and sent a discreet note to my lawyer outlining potential next steps, all while careful never to alert Chelsea or Dad. To them, I was still the composed sister, the dutiful daughter who smiled politely at family dinners and never stirred the pot. No one suspected the quiet storm gathering beneath my calm exterior. Living this double life was exhausting in its way. At casual family gatherings, I laughed at Chelsea's jokes, made small talk with Dad, and kept my emotions carefully hidden. The weight of the secret was a silent burden pressing against my ribs, but I refused to let it show. The house smelled faintly of lavender and old wood, the sounds of muted conversation floating through the rooms as I played the role they expected. This was the calm before the storm, the deceptive lull before everything changed. Sometimes, when I was alone, I caught my reflection in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Her eyes held a quiet strength now, a shield forged through years of unseen battles. I was a time bomb, yes, but one calibrated to explode only when the moment was perfect. Daniel noticed the shift too. His quiet nods and steady support were anchors in this sea of tension. "They won't see it coming," he said one evening, his voice low but certain. I nodded, the corners of my lips tightening into a controlled smile. The war had begun, silently, beneath the surface. The attic was a dusty, forgotten place, filled with relics of our past, a trunk of faded photographs, old Christmas decorations, and boxes labeled in my mother's looping handwriting. I wasn't supposed to be going through these things, but something compelled me to look deeper that day. That's when I found it. A plain envelope, yellowed with age, carefully tucked between the pages of a ledger. My name was written on it in my grandfather's hand, the ink slightly smudged, but unmistakable. My heart pounded as I unfolded the letter inside, the paper crackling softly in the quiet. The letter was from my grandfather, addressed to me, revealing a devastating secret. Decades ago, my mother had siphoned off $200,000 from the inheritance meant for me, funneling it into an account for Chelsea. Attached were bank statements and forged receipts, proof that this wasn't a simple oversight. It was deliberate, systematic theft. My breath hitched, and I sank onto an old wooden crate, the weight of betrayal crashing over me in waves. It wasn't just Chelsea. It was a long, dark pattern woven through our family history, a truth buried beneath layers of lies. I clutched the letter like a lifeline, the raw hurt mingling with a fierce surge of vindication. This wasn't merely a sibling rivalry or petty jealousy. It was a calculated injustice that had shaped my life. The documents in my hands were proof, undeniable and cold. Suddenly, the fight wasn't just about reclaiming respect or fairness. It was about righting a profound wrong. The urgency inside me grew, a fire that burned hotter than before. This letter was a catalyst, a summons to act with unwavering resolve. Tears threatened, but I refused to let them fall. Instead, I whispered to the empty attic, "I see you now. I won't be silenced anymore." The past had always haunted me, but now it fueled a new clarity. The stakes were higher than I ever imagined. This was no longer about family drama. It was about justice. I folded the letter carefully, placing it in my bag with the other evidence. The Wilson family's secrets were unraveling, and I held the key. The morning I stopped the financial support felt surreal. The silence in the house was heavier than usual, as if the walls themselves sensed the shift. I didn't make announcements or threats. I simply stopped paying the mortgage and bills I'd covered for years. The first missed payment was like a pebble dropped into a still pond, causing ripples I could already see spreading. Chelsea's phone started buzzing with calls she ignored, and I overheard a faint tension in Dad's voice when he mentioned a late notice. I sent a formal letter to my lawyer, referencing the inheritance fraud, and officially signaling my intent to claim what was rightfully mine. It was a quiet but firm declaration, a line drawn in the sand. Chelsea's carefully constructed facade began to crack. Late payments, collection notices, and the subtle panic I could almost taste in the air around her. Yet I remained composed in family settings, my expression calm and impassive. The irony was bitter. I was the one being excluded, yet I was the one holding the power now. Daniel noticed the change in me and stood beside me unwaveringly. He was my anchor amidst the rising storm. "They're going to feel this," he said softly one evening, his eyes steady. I nodded, the corners of my mouth lifting in a silent promise. The first waves had hit, and though the battles ahead would be harder, the momentum was mine. I was no longer the invisible sister. I was the force they had ignored for too long. The fight wasn't just beginning. It was escalating, and there was no turning back. The air in the dining hall thickened as I cleared my throat, the murmurs of casual conversations fading into a fragile silence. Surrounded by extended family, friends, and Daniel's steady presence beside me, I felt the weight of years pressing down, but also the unyielding strength of truth ready to break free. "I need a moment," I said firmly, my voice steady despite the pounding in my chest. Eyes turned toward me, some curious, some wary. I took a breath and pulled out the envelope, the letter from Grandfather, alongside the meticulously organized financial documents. "This family has hidden truths," I started, carefully choosing each word to pierce the facade. Truths about stolen inheritance, favoritism that erased me, and lies that have shaped our lives. Chelsea's face paled, lips twitching as if to protest, but no words came. Dad's gaze dropped to the floor, unable to meet mine or anyone else's. The room seemed to hold its breath as I laid out the details, the diverted funds, the forgery, the years of unacknowledged sacrifice that had kept this family afloat. For decades, I said, voice rising just enough to command attention, I carried this burden silently, but today I reclaim my voice. I saw shock ripple through the crowd, whispers beginning to stir like a gathering storm. For once, I was the center. Not the invisible one, but the one who held the evidence, the power to rewrite the story. The veneer cracked, and beneath it, the raw, painful truth shone bright in the harsh light of exposure. I watched Chelsea's eyes dart frantically, searching for an escape, a defense that didn't come. Dad's shoulders slumped, his silence louder than any words he could have said. The room's energy shifted palpably. The people who had ignored me now looked at me with a mix of disbelief and newfound respect. I'm not here to destroy this family, I continued, voice softer but no less fierce. I'm here to demand fairness, honesty, and acknowledgement of the wrongs done. The moment hung heavy, a definitive turning point. The power I'd been denied all my life was finally mine, held not by entitlement or charm, but by truth and quiet resilience. In this charged silence, I felt a surge of vindication, but also a flicker of sorrow, for the years lost, for the betrayal that had cut so deep. Yet beneath it all, a fierce clarity. I was no longer the overlooked sister, but the force awakening the family's conscience. The room remained still, the truth settling like dust on old wounds. This was my moment, not just to expose, but to reclaim everything they had tried to take from me. After that night, the fallout was immediate and relentless. Chelsea's financial troubles, once whispered behind closed doors, now exploded into the open. Her usual charm and manipulation faltered under the weight of undeniable evidence. She faced angry relatives who withdrew their informal loans and stopped bailing her out. The financial safety net she'd long relied on unraveled rapidly, and suddenly the debts and unpaid bills that once seemed easy to ignore became inescapable. Dad, long silent and passive, faced a wave of criticism for enabling the abuse and turning a blind eye to my pain. His hesitation and guilt grew palpable in family conversations, his usual refuge shaken. I was flooded with messages, some from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, others close family members grappling with the revelations. Some texts were desperate apologies, confessions of regret for not seeing the truth sooner. Others were angry denials, attempts to twist the narrative back in Chelsea's favor. I read them all but responded with calm firmness. I wasn't there to negotiate or soothe old wounds. I was there to maintain boundaries I'd finally set in stone. Daniel reminded me to stay strong, and I leaned on that support like never before. Slowly, though, the tide turned. More family members began questioning their loyalties, seeking clarity rather than comfortable lies. The carefully constructed house of cards Chelsea had built was collapsing, and I watched it with a strange mix of sorrow and quiet triumph. Despite the chaos, I refused to be drawn into drama or manipulation. The truth was my armor, and I wielded it with deliberate care. Watching Chelsea's world unravel was bitter, but I knew the cost of silence had been far greater. I stayed resolute, guarding the line between justice and cruelty, determined not to let anger consume me. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming what was rightfully mine. What once felt like an impossible battle had turned into a reckoning I was ready to face. The family's broken illusions lay bare, and I stood firmly on the side of truth, watching the consequences unfold like ripples after a stone thrown into still water. Chelsea's desperation grew more obvious as days turned into weeks. She ramped up her manipulation, threatening legal action with lawyers she couldn't afford, painting herself as the victim to anyone who would listen. I received messages from family members caught between loyalty and doubt. Many urged me to forgive for the family's sake, to bury the bones and return to a fragile peace. But I stood firm, unmoved by pleas or threats. Daniel's quiet reminders kept me grounded. This was about respect, not reconciliation at any cost. Some relatives reached out with heartfelt apologies, admitting how blind they had been or how much they regretted siding with Chelsea. I appreciated their honesty, but kept my distance, protecting the fragile peace I was building. Chelsea's isolation deepened with each failed ploy. Her manipulative performances, meant to garner sympathy, only revealed her desperation and fractured her alliances. She lost power not because I sought to destroy her, but because she gambled everything on lies that finally unraveled. Family gatherings became awkward, conversations stiff with unspoken truths. The people who once danced to her tune now spoke quietly with me, seeking the real story, hoping for healing. But healing takes time, and for now, I needed space to preserve my dignity and strength. My resolve never wavered. This battle was over. I hadn't just survived. I had won on my terms, without losing myself in bitterness or rage. 6 months later, the silence in my home was a balm I never knew I needed. Daniel and I had built a sanctuary filled with respect, peace, and understanding, things the Wilson family had long denied me. I had set clear, firm boundaries. No engagement without mutual respect. No financial support without accountability. This new life was mine, free from the suffocating web of favoritism and neglect that had defined my past. Chelsea and Dad faced the consequences of their choices: strained relationships, financial struggles, and the weight of truths they could no longer escape. I felt neither triumph nor pity, only a quiet acceptance that came from reclaiming my own narrative. Reflecting on this journey, I saw how the silence had transformed me, not into someone bitter, but into someone fiercely dignified. I learned that peace isn't found in others' approval, but in standing firmly for yourself. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving, shaping a future on my own terms. The pain, the battles, the revelations, they had all led me here. And though the wounds were still healing, I was ready to move forward with hope. The past was a chapter closed. The future was a story I would write with my own hand. For the first time in a long time, I felt the quiet, steady pulse of freedom, and it was everything.